Hello, this is Little Green Goals, and welcome back to Goosebumps Revisited, a series where I break down a classic Goosebumps book and any episode that goes along with it. I will also be totaling up some of our Goosebumps cliches and classic moments. This week, I am excited to visit Say Cheese and Die. This book was a bit of a nothing burger for me as a kid. All I remembered about was the lack of barbecuing skeletons and an evil camera. After reading it, I can't say it won me over later in life. I'd be curious to know if this ranks among anyone's favorites. I will say though, despite the cover not correlating with the story at all, it was easily one of my favorite ones. I think I loved it so much because there's so many little details you can look at, with each skeleton doing its own thing. This of course is a Jacobus cover, but a fun bit of trivia about this one is that Stein actually had to go back and add a reference to a dream about skeletons, because Jacobus had drawn something that had nothing to do with the story at all. This of course isn't Jacobus' fault, since we established in Welcome to Dead House that he was typically given very little information outside of the title, blurb, or maybe like a chapter before illustrating the cover. As per usual, the 2003 version is just the original with a bright slime border, so nothing too exciting there. The 2009 version is pretty different from the original, but I don't like it. For whatever reason, this cover just doesn't even look like a Goosebumps book to me. It's also really boring in comparison to the skeletons having themselves some hamburgers. Our front tag says, "One picture is worth 1,000 screams," which is of course a play on the "one picture is worth 1,000 words." Our back tag says, "Every picture tells a story." I think both of these work since there's really not much else to this story. It's all about an evil soul-snatching camera. As far as merchandise goes, Say Cheese and Die didn't really get anything too exciting. They mostly just went with sticking the cover on things like notebooks, puzzles, and apparently this holographic necklace that's really more about Curly the skeleton than anything else. Before we start the beat for beat summary, let's look at the blurb on the back. Greg thinks there's something wrong with this old camera he and his friends found. The photographs keep turning out wrong. Very wrong. Like the snapshot Greg took of his father's new car that shows it totaled. And then Greg's father gets in a nasty wreck. But Greg's friends don't believe him. Sherry even makes Greg bring the camera to her birthday party and take her picture. Only Sherry's not in the photograph when it develops. Is Sherry about to be taken out of the picture permanently? Who's going to take the fall next for the evil camera? So this book begins with a shotgun blast of names. We have our protagonist, Greg Banks, hanging out with his three friends Michael Warner, Doug Arthur, and Sherry Walker. They're having a boring afternoon and complain about having nothing to do in Pitt's Landing, which they've decided to give the slogan "Pitt's Landing is the Pits." And with a name like that, I'd kind of have to agree. But really, Pitt's Landing is just your average small town, at least so far. Actually, before being peppered with names, in our very first sentence we get another fashionista sporting some denim cutoffs. We also learned that no one actually calls Doug Doug. Instead they call him Bird because he looks a lot like a bird. He had long skinny legs and took long stork-like steps under his thick tuft of brown hair, which he seldom brushed. He had small bird-like brown eyes and a long nose that curved like a beak. Doug didn't really like being called Bird, but he was used to it. He really does kind of sound like Sweet D. Maybe this group is just the Always Sunny gang. They discuss loitering in the local comic shop so they can check out the latest X-Force comic, which is apparently a real thing according to Google, and it was popular in the early 90s, so I guess we'll be getting jiggy with that. They then discuss their own X-Force, but sadly, there's no crime in Pitt's Landing, so old Bird says, "We could fight Crabgrass." He was the jokester of the group. Okay, Stein, if you say so. Unfortunately, these lines never stop, and Bird is easily one of the most annoying Goosebumps characters I think we've encountered so far. Sherry's coming from Michael's fashionista crown though, because we learned she's wearing an oversized yellow sweater with bright green leggings. And I think this is the third story to reference bright green leggings, so I think Stein has decided these are the height of fashion. Sherry's hobby was teasing Bird, and I'm betting we'll see lots of It's a Prank Bros with these little rascals. You'll see later if Bird is taking the crown for the most annoying character so far, Sherry's potentially the dumbest one yet. By page 3, we get our patented Stein character description for Greg. With his big shoulders and muscular arms and legs, Greg was the natural athlete of the group. He was blonde and good looking, with flashing green eyes and a wide friendly smile. We also learned our friend Michael is the group fat kid, and he shows a lot of enthusiasm for the prospect of ice cream. I kind of hope his running character trait is just wanting food throughout the book. To end their boredom, they proceed to play Fallout with the leader, as 90 kids do, and head into town. The group stops outside an abandoned old house known as the Coffin House, and decide to spice up their afternoon with a little breaking and entering. Just before we head in, we get a chapter cliffhanger where something suddenly pops out of the weeds and attacks Greg. This is of course just ends up being the neighborhood Cocker Spaniel, just wanting to play. Go home, Trigger. The kids stand outside and debate going in, while Greg gets frustrated with always having to be the sensible one. Bird starts calling him a chicken, and Bird began clucking loudly, tucking his hands into his armpits and flapping his arms. With his beady eyes and beaky nose, he looks just like a chicken. This poor child sounds homely as hell. But for whatever reason, this dance wins him over. Greg worries about Spidey, who was a weird-looking man. 50 or 60, they'd all seen lurking around town. He dressed entirely in black and crept along, with his long, slender legs. He looked like a black spider, so the kids called him Spidey. Most likely, he was a homeless guy. No one really knew anything about him, where he'd come from, where he lived, but a lot of the kids had seen him hanging around the Coffin House. These kids really like animal nicknames for some reason, although I can't really judge them too hard because when I was a kid, we had a local turtle lady, who, as you might guess, looked like a turtle. It's pretty much confirmed that Spidey lives in the coffin house, but this won't stop our adventurers. And I can't say that I blame them. Snooping around a creepy old house sounds like a lot of fun. Well, until it's not. I have to say that there's just so much banter with these kids, it's hard to even know where to begin. I know they call Bird the jokester, but these kids are nothing but wisecracks. It's kind of like an awful Reddit chain of just one bad joke after the other trying to top the next. Suddenly, Bird is missing down in the basement and begins shouting for help that something has him, and because it's a chapter cliffhanger, and because it's Bird, we can safely assume that this is just a prank, bro, and guess what? It is. Once in the basement, they discover Spidey's nest, complete with a dirty, stained mattress and Hungry Man dinner scattered everywhere. He kind of lives like a frat bro. Sherry finds an old wardrobe in the basement and decides to throw on a fur coat from it, because that's what I always want to cover myself in is dirty, bug-infested clothing. But Sherry isn't the only one with questionable decision-making, and the whole group helps themselves to a game of dress-up, and they just have a grand old time. Well, everybody except for Greg, who remains the sensible one. Good for you, Greg. You don't need fleas. While the others are wearing old, dirty clothes, Greg comes across an old camera in a secret cabinet. Prepare to say cheese and die, Greg. Greg just so happens to be a camera enthusiast, to the point where he subscribes to camera magazines, so he's all about this new treasure. Despite being a camera expert, he somehow is surprised when it ends up basically just being a Polaroid, after a photo pops out at the bottom from a quick test photo of Michael. As Greg looks on astonished at the printing Polaroid, he suddenly hears a loud crash because our big boy Michael snapped the railing, tumbled, and sprained his ankle. To make matters worse, we cut to a chapter cliffhanger because the kids suddenly hear footsteps upstairs. They carry Michael to a second set of stairs conveniently located across the basement, but in a second chapter cliffhanger surprise, the door won't budge so they're stuck in there. But oh wait, yes it will, they just have to push harder. Once free, Bird decides to remind Michael of his weight and says, "Lucky thing you have all the extra padding." They then realize that they didn't admire Michael's photo properly, and to their collective horror, the photo isn't the one Greg took. Instead, it's a photo of Michael midair on his journey off the railing. This has the kids upset because they were certain the photo was supposed to be the one of Michael posing in his scabies clothing. Despite this, the kids quickly move past the mystery, concluding it just must be broken, because that's how broken cameras work, and then they all head to their respective homes. Outside his house, Greg realizes his father bought a new car, which is of course a navy blue Taurus station wagon, because station wagons are the only things people are allowed to drive in Stein's universe. Greg takes a photo of the new car, and after some camera hiding antics in his bedroom, he realizes to his chapter cliffhanger horror that the photo shows the new car all smashed up and completely totaled. During dinner, the family has a totally normal meal, which is of course veal, which Greg's older brother Terry mistakes for chicken. No, Terry, the chicken probably lived a marginally better life than the calf, restricted from movement for extra flavor. Despite Greg's attempts to escape, he ends up going for a ride in the new station wagon, as the family marvels at the newest of 90s technology, like cup holders. At the encouragement of Terry, the dad decides to get wild and see how fast his car can go. The dad reaches 60, and he immediately gets scolded by the mom that the speed limit is 55. While they're having this out-of-control good time, the father nearly kills his entire family by crashing into a truck, but luckily they avoid collision at the last second. This whole ordeal confuses Greg, but he decides he needs more data, so in the name of science, he decides to take a photo of his unsuspecting brother Terry. The photo comes out with Terry looking frightened and outside a nearby playground, but Greg decides that the camera is just broken and commits to not worrying about it. The next day, for some reason, Greg immediately forgets his plans to abandon the camera and brings it to Bird's baseball game. We have some lovely banter among the children where Greg threatens to give Sherry a knuckle sandwich and she threatens to make him eat a knuckle sandwich. We're also treated to another description of how excruciatingly ugly Bird is. This time he looks like an ostrich at the plate. This guy really is Sweetie. Sherry takes a photo of Bird despite Greg's pleas not to, and we get a detailed description that sounds like Vecna got a hold of him. The photo showed Bird sprawled unconscious on his back on the ground, his mouth twisted open, his neck bent at a frightening angle, his eyes shut tight. Sherry and Greg discuss how weird the photos are, and then the two kids realize there's no way to tell how to load film into the camera. You'd think our camera aficionado would have noticed this earlier. Also, side note, the team's name is the Dolphins. Just thought you should know that, although I guess it's not any weirder than a football team being called the Dolphins. Second side note, dolphins are full on savage. If you ever want to be horrified, read about what they do with dead fish. Here's a hint, it's not a flashlight. As Sherry and Greg are examining the camera for any sort of opening, they suddenly notice their buddy Bird laying out on the ground at an odd angle, kind of like in the photo. This is of course a chapter cliffhanger surprise, but since it's Bird, once again, it's just a prank. I want to know what the crowd thought as this kid just sprawled out on the ground like that. They return to their seats to watch a thrilling game of baseball. You know what's as exciting as watching baseball? Reading about kids watching baseball. We do get another great Bird description, as he's said to be storking after the ball. This poor ugly child also gets booed by the crowd as he messes up plays. Towards the end of the game, the picture finally comes to fruition as the baseball slams into the side of Bird's head. Greg watched in horror as the ball bounced off Bird and dribbled away into the infield grass. Bird's eyes went wide with disbelief, confusion. He stood frozen in place on the base path for a long moment. Then both of his hands shot up above his head. He uttered a shrill cry, long and loud, like a high-pitched whinny of a horse. His eyes rolled up into his head, he sank to his knees, uttered another cry, softer this time, then collapsed, sprawling on his back, his neck at an unnatural angle, his eyes closed. He didn't move. Bird is kind of obnoxious, so I can't say I was terribly upset when he got knocked the out. During all this chaos, brother Terry suddenly appears with the same frightened expression as the photograph earlier. He reveals that their dad has been in an accident and the new car is totaled. As Greg is learning this, he also notices that Spidey is spying on him from under the bleachers. And given all that's happening, I'm surprised he even noticed Spidey. The brothers reach the hospital and we spend a lot of time discussing colors, I guess to show that Greg is traumatized and not processing things well. Once we find the father, it's revealed he's all bandaged up like a mummy. Greg decides now is the time to tell the family about the car wreck picture, and he is shocked when nobody is taking him seriously. Greg then begins to wonder if the camera can show the future about upcoming bad events, or if the camera is causing bad events. Good question, Greg. It's revealed later that Bird was lucky and he didn't even have a concussion, which somehow I doubt that. For some reason, Sherry becomes absolutely hell-bent on Greg bringing that camera to her birthday party, despite witnessing what happened to Michael and Bird. And this is why I think Sherry deserves the title as the stupidest character this far, because or maybe she's just trying to off these boys, I don't know, but she is hell-bent on that camera coming to this birthday party. Greg then reveals a nightmare he had about the camera where his whole family ends up being skeletons on a Polaroid. This is the dream I mentioned earlier that was written just to justify the cover that was illustrated. Instead of telling Sherry to shove that camera up her ass, he brings it to the birthday party. And at this point, Sherry, you're gonna get what you deserve. At the party, Bird immediately begins clucking like a chicken, because I don't know if you know this, but he looks like a bird, and it's funny. Someone even shouts this time, "Hey Bird, go lay an egg." Hysterical. The children then proceed to bully Michael over his ugly Hawaiian shirt that his grandma gave him, which he insists he only wore because everything else was dirty. Bird then rubs dirt all over it and declares it's dirty now too. These are great friends. Sherry appears and immediately begins demanding her photo be taken and plans on having everybody take photos at the party because it'll just be so crazy. I'd give Sherry what she wants and take 6 of her. The photo develops and Sherry is nowhere to be found in it. They try another and once again Sherry doesn't appear in the photo. She declares the camera is stupid and broken and they all move on from the camera. This birthday party is revealed to be like 9 girls and 3 boys. There are discussions of truth or dare and spin the bottle, which immediately fills Greg with dread, but Bird is ready for this. I'm assuming this is because this is the only time that this poor ugly boy is going to get a chance to kiss anyone. The kids play in the woods for a bit before Sherry's mom calls them in for cake. For some reason the mom remarks, "I must be a pretty bad mom, allowing you all to go off into the woods by yourselves." The kids all file in, and then in a chapter cliffhanger surprise, everyone realizes that Sherry is nowhere to be found. And kind of I'm like, good. Sherry and Bird have overstayed their welcome at this point, because this past chapter, they were like relentlessly obnoxious, more so than usual. The police are called and everyone is sent home because Sherry is still nowhere to be found. We then spend a ridiculously long time, like an entire chapter, where Greg debates with himself about whether he should tell the police about the camera or not. He does, and surprise, it doesn't go well, because they don't believe him and they send him home. Once home, he realizes that he's home alone, and that somebody has ransacked his bedroom. This, of course, is Spidey looking for his camera, and thankfully Greg doesn't take too long to realize this. He organizes his 2 remaining friends and they meet at a park to formulate a plan. Greg wants to return the camera to the Kaufman house, but the 2 other boys think they should just toss the camera. A scuffle ensues, and of course, Bird being the worst, accidentally takes Greg's photo in a chapter cliffhanger. In a late in the story twist, we are suddenly introduced to 2 9th grade bullies who have a passion for stealing bikes and apparently crippling children. The 2 bullies, who are of course wearing heavy metal t-shirts like our previous Goosebumps bullies, take an interest in the camera. This is just a wasted chapter though, because it goes absolutely nowhere. The bullies briefly get a hold of the camera and threaten to take a photo, but they never do. And then Michael and Bird bail on Greg and they leave him to return the camera on his own if he decides to. Sometime later, like after chickening out, Greg suddenly remembers he has a photo of himself taken in his pocket, and he decides to check it. This photo is a curveball because this time it's a photo of Greg and Sherry looking terrified as a big shadow looms over both of them. For a second I was thinking, oh, maybe Sherry's invisible, but then I remembered Let's Get Invisible is the 6th book. Now I'm just thinking maybe she got kidnapped by Spidey and is being held hostage in the Kaufman house. We jump to 2 days later and Sherry is still missing, so then we have an entire chapter where Greg just wallows in guilt, which eventually culminates in him just ripping up the 2 photos of Sherry he took. Suddenly we get a chapter cliffhanger where Greg receives a phone call from, surprise, Sherry. Apparently Sherry just up and vanished 2 days ago and didn't remember anything the entire time. She agrees with Greg now though that the camera doesn't predict bad things, that instead it causes them. For some reason this makes Greg double down on returning the camera to the Kaufman house. You know, instead of like burning the damn thing. But no, instead he wants to leave it where somebody else can possibly find it. I'll be honest, this book was keeping a nice pace at the start, but towards the end here, it's just had multiple chapters in a row of just filler. Like, let's move this along, Stein. Sherry and Greg meet at a park to discuss returning the camera when suddenly another picture comes true, and we have Spidey's shadow creeping over them in a chapter cliffhanger. Spidey chases after them in multiple pages of spider similes and metaphors. He doesn't catch them, and instead he gets scared off by a neighbor, and for the 100th time a chapter ends with Greg saying he needs to return the camera to the Kaufman house. I know, Greg, you say it all the time. Just do it. We cut to the next chapter, and we are finally outside the Kaufman house, with Sherry and Greg getting ready to put the camera back in. We're treated to some pages of filler, which culminate to a chapter cliffhanger about a bang that ends up just being the wind slamming a door shut. You'd think, instead of the back half of this book just being repetitive, mundane tasks, we could have done something with those two bullies taking photos, but no. Descriptions of dead lawns and constantly saying, I need to get rid of this camera, are way more exciting. They get into the house where they're terrified of every single sound this old house makes. It's also storming outside, so Stein is trying to set the mood here. They head down into the basement, put the camera away, and then right before they're leaving, Spidey appears at the top of the stairs. Spidey kind of sits the kids down for some story explaining. We find out that Spidey is Dr. Fritz Fredericks, and that he helped invent this camera. So yet we have another mad scientist on our hands here. Dr. Fredericks got greedy and stole the magic camera from his lab partner, who turned out to be even more evil than Dr. Fredericks. His partner was a master of the dark arts, and put a curse on the camera. Dr. Fredericks reveals that this camera has killed people, and it can't be destroyed. So now he's made it his mission in life just to hide it so nobody else can find it. But, Dr. Fritz, you did a pretty half-assed job here considering you dedicated your life to this. Dr. Fredericks explains how some primitive people believe cameras steal people's souls, but this camera actually does. At this point, the kids are kind of alright, it's been real, but I'm gonna head out of here. But Dr. Fredericks is in true evil fashion says, no, you know too much and now you can't leave. The kids try to make their escape and they wrestle around with this man briefly before Sherry takes Dr. Fredericks' photo. The man screams in pain as the kids escape up the stairs, but outside they realize he's not chasing them and they don't hear anything, so they decide to go back and check once more and see what's happening. Once inside, the kids find a dead body. That's right, this book goes there. Dr. Fredericks is found dead. It's said that his eyes are bulged out, the mouth open in a twisted O of terror. The face stared up at them, frozen, dead. Greg hides the camera back where he found it, and the kids head home to call the police. They tell the police they were hiding inside to get away from the storm, and when they just happen to find a freshly dead Spidey, the police question this no further, and it's revealed that the man died of heart failure, which for some reason they reported to these two children. But don't worry, we don't just end there. It turns out that the two bullies from earlier were spying on Greg as he hid the camera in the basement, so the story ends with the two bullies emerging from the Kaufman house, camera in hand, ready to take some photos. Also, I like that the bullies watched these two kids kill a man, but they were both more preoccupied with getting that camera. But that's it, that's the end. When looking at this episode, right off the bat, the most exciting thing about it is that this one stars a young Canadian superstar Ryan Gosling as our protagonist Greg in all his 90s floppy hair glory. Other notable actors include Scott Speedman as the cop, and he's recently gotten pretty popular in Grey's Anatomy, and also Renessa Blitz as Sherry, whose notable role is voicing this evil.
There's no way I'm going home without my stuff.
There's no way I'm going home without you.
It's proof. Nobody will believe me without it.
I'll believe you. They'll believe you. Janet, you want proof? I'll give you proof. Here's proof of what'll happen to you if you stay here with your stuff.
Arnold, no! Oh, no!
This episode seems to be styled like a music video. Look at all these shaky shots and weird angles. I was looking forward to the hideous child that they'd find to play Bird, but sadly they just chose a regular looking kid. In the episode, the kids break into an old industrial building set for demolition, where they find the camera. The camera's design was certainly a choice. If I came across this massive thing, I'm not sure I would even know it's a camera. But luckily, Ryan Gosling knows what it is, and immediately sets off some stunt work with Bird. Plus, it also gives us Spidey's squeal.
What are you doing here?
It's interesting what they decide to keep verbatim from the books at times. Why this conversation about veal?
It's good chicken, Mom.
It's not chicken, Terry. It's veal.
It's good veal.
I kind of love the car crash sequence. I don't know why, it just made me laugh that we got to look at each character's reaction.
Ah, watch out!
That jerk. He could have killed us.
That was close.
Is everyone okay? Greg? Greg?
Also, the brother, Terry, is the definition of a 90s stoner.
Monsieur Troll, last call for dinner. Hey, is that picture ready yet?
It didn't turn out. Look, don't you know how to knock?
Nuh-uh. I haven't taken that class yet.
Some other highlights from this episode are the shots of this cop who keeps his sunglasses on at night the entire time he's interrogating Ryan Gosling, and I guess so does Spidey. I also enjoyed the fun dream sequence we had with the cartoon skeleton Polaroids.
Okay, everybody. Say cheese. Cheese!
The ending was a slight letdown because I really wanted to watch Spidey act out a death scene, but instead he gets sucked into the camera.
Release me! Release me! Someone! Anyone! Release me!
However, not for long because our bullies quickly appear and let him back out.
Those jerks actually thought they could hide it from us. Say cheese.
Overall, Say Cheese and Die wasn't one of my favorites. It felt really repetitive at times, and I found the characters to be more annoying than not, especially the friend group outside of Greg. I'm really surprised that this one warranted a sequel. The evil camera was a fun concept, but it just wasn't used as often as it could be. In general, this book just wasn't very interesting, but it also wasn't actively bad. I'll give this one 3 out of 5 baseballs to the face. Alright, let's switch to our Goosebumps totals. We don't have any It's Only a Dreams or shoulder scares, but we do have some asshole victims. The obvious ones being, of course, the two bullies, Joey and Mickey, who pick up the evil camera at the end of the story to take some photos. I considered putting Bird on this list after he gets taken out with the baseball at the hands of the camera, but then I realized if I add him, I have to add Sherry too. I think we're supposed to find these two charming and not completely obnoxious, so they escape the tally this time, but we'll see about the sequel. Getting Jiggy with the 90s did okay with this book, giving us 6 90s moments. These included X-Force, Hungry Man dinners, calling things bad for cool, a navy blue Taurus station wagon, knuckle sandwiches, and spin the bottle. This brings our series total to 29 Jiggy 90 moments. As per usual, vomit count remains dry, and this time not even any mentions of nausea, so next. We had 2 It's a Prank Bros, both at the hands of the ever-annoying Bird. First when he pretends to get got in the basement, and the second when he pretends to be hurt out in the baseball field. This brings us to 5 It's a Prank Bros. Say Cheese and Die aced out Monster Blood by giving us 20 chapter cliffhangers, one more than in Monster Blood. Say Cheese and Die, however, had no issue essentially recycling the same style of cliffhangers ad nauseum. This raises our Goosebumps total to 62. The clunky cliffhanger award for this book goes to chapters 1 to 2, where a Cocker Spaniel we meet one page earlier pops out and scares Greg for some reason. Shocker ending. Our twist ending to this one plays into the asshole victims, where, surprise, the bullies Joey and Mickey were spying on them and watched Greg hide the camera the whole time, and they go to snatch it at the end of the story. I guess they just had to wait for the dead body to be removed. This brings our shocking endings to 3. Well, that's it for the 4th book. This one wasn't one of my favorites, but I still enjoyed getting to go through it. I hope you enjoyed my clips of fate being tested or camera-related trauma. Be sure to let me know what you thought of Say Cheese and Die in the comments. I really wanted to watch some skeletons do some barbecuing, but what can you do? Anyways, thanks again for watching, and make sure you subscribe for
the pride, the love,